Alright, so our wort is boiling and we're going to add the first addition of hops for our brew schedule that we got with our ingredient kit. So these hops smell awesome. They come in as a pellet. I like to add these things slowly on my brew paddle. Sometimes if you add them too fast they can start to boil over, but I have my my spray bottle to prevent that. Some people like to add these hops in the sock there, keep their brew cleaner. But I always do secondary fermentation, which removes 95% of that stuff anyway. So, all right, so our hops are added. Really changes the smell. Stir that around a little bit, and then we'll record that in our brew record and come back when we have to add our next set of hops. Okay, so our wort has been boiling 35 minutes according to the brew schedule with the first addition of the hops. We're going to add the last addition of hops here. Wow, awesome. They smell great. The whole house smells like brewing beer now. We're going to add these and then we're going to let it continue to boil for another 20 minutes according to schedule. Once we're done with that 20 minutes, flame out and we'll put it in an ice bath to begin chilling so that we can put it in our fermenter to pitch the yeast. Okay, so we're just about ready to turn the flame off on our boil, and I'm just making a couple of notes here about what we did today, just so I can go back and look. I have here a homemade wort chiller, right? So you can buy a wort chiller for about 70 bucks. I put this thing together for about $20, and part of my plan is to do a video on how to actually make this homemade wort chiller. But part of sanitizing this wort chiller is put it right in the boil. It's made out of copper. Stick it right in the boil and go with that. If I turn the heat off, I'm going to take this and put it in my sanitizing bucket because I'm going to want to stir it later, use a paddle to stir. I'm going to put this in an ice bath, which I already have set up over here. And my freezer doesn't keep up with the amount of ice that we need. So luckily there's a foot of snow on the ground and we use the snow. I'm going to set up my homemade wort chiller. This has a little pump that I found that's 1/4 inch that fits perfectly to my wort chiller. So I'll submerge that in ice water, and this is hot, so I'm going to need a towel here. Careful not to get being careful not to get the towel over my wort because I don't want to drop anything in there or any contamination. So I put my pump hose right in my copper tube. Submerge my pump into my ice bath, plug it in. And we start chilling our wort. And it's very hot. So this significantly reduces the time versus just putting it in an ice bath. I put it in an ice bath and I'm using a wort chiller. This helps cool it much quicker, saves time, reduces the effect of the possibility of getting bacteria into our boil before we pitch our yeast. Be very careful not to get anything over top of this sink, over top of our wort while it cools. Our ice bath is melting quickly and our wort chiller is pumping hot water, melting the ice. So we'll be back here in a few minutes when we're down to approximately 70 degrees, and I have my floating thermometer which I will put in there. I also have my hydrometer, which I will measure my specific gravity. Then I will record that in my book. Okay, so the wort chiller's been running for about 13 minutes. It's also sat in an ice bath. Our wort temperature is down around 70 degrees. Okay, so that is a good temperature. I'm going to put this in my sanitization bucket. I've also been chilling 3 gallons of water. So typically when I do a brew, I put 5.5 gallons of water in the brew kettle. I buy 3 gallons of water and I begin to chill them. And this helps reduce the temperature of the wort. It also, when I pour it into my fermenter, it helps me aerate the wort before I add my yeast, and I'll show that here in a second. So I'm going to let the water out of my ice bath. I'm going to pull my wort chiller out of the wort. That's done. I don't need sanitizing next time. I have my fermenter right here, my lid. Fermenter's right here. It's been sanitized. A little water left in it. This is no rinse sanitizer, so it's fine. I have this here ready to go. You'll notice that I have a liquid crystal thermometer on the side so I can tell the temperature of the yeast before I pour it. I will put this on the floor. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, and I will get a gallon of water, right, ready to go. There. First gallon of water. I take my wort out of the sink. Dry off the bottom of this. Brew kettle. So I don't spill any of that water in there. Okay, so I'm going to pour this into my fermenter. Hops left over in my container. I like to get all that in there. I don't know if it matters, but it will separate out when I go to the secondary fermentation. I will then start pouring my gallons of water in here. I can see through the container here and notice when I get to 5 gallons. So there's a creamy head on top of this wort, just like a beer. What I'm doing is aerating the wort. Half a gallon of water, a little bit more maybe. That's about. Again, it doesn't have to be 100%. I look here, maybe a little bit more. Okay. The thing I want to do is I want to test the specific gravity. This will tell me the specific gravity of the beer. Then according to the brew schedule, it's supposed to have a specific starting gravity and then a final gravity. And you know, if you have questions about whether your beer is fermented, you test for the final gravity. This is going to be tough because of the foam on top, but if I can just kick it down a little bit, get it in there. I don't want my fingers in there. Well, look. It's about 145. It's hard to see. These things are hard to see. Back in my sanitization. No rinse sanitizer. Okay, so I got my paddle back. I'm now going to pitch my yeast. Just one more check on the temperature. I'll check the temperature on the side, and it's about 65 degrees, 64, 66 degrees, right in there. This is my yeast starter that I started 2 days ago. It's been going. I'm going to take my airlock off of here and put it in sanitization because my other airlock's down on a 5-gallon carboy. I need to have a few airlocks, to be honest with you, but I don't. So I'm going to pour out the water. Sanitize this quick. This sanitization only needs contact. So once it's contacted, it should be sanitized. And I'll let it dry off on this paper towel I have here. In theory, I think paper towel should be sanitary. I'm not really sure though. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to shake this up. So there should be positive pressure in this with carbon dioxide. This was bubbling pretty good. Carbon dioxide coming out. One thing I am going to do when I pull out that stopper is I'm just going to sanitize the edge of the bottle with a lighter. It'll just burn off any germs. That way I'm sure I don't introduce anything into my fermentation. So if I just do this, it's sitting on my counter for a couple days. It could have something on it, and I really just don't want anything entering my bottle, entering my fermenter. Like this. So I check my temperature, make sure I can pitch my my yeast. You don't want to pitch your yeast too high. So I'm going to pour this all in there. There may be some dead. I probably could have washed it. We'll do another video on washing yeast. But I'm going to go to a secondary fermentation, so that should eliminate most dead yeast anyway. I'll pour this in here. And this should get it kick-started where that airlock should be bubbling in the next 10 hours. I sanitize this. So we're going to go, we're going to just paddle down a little bit. Just get that going a little bit. Back in sanitization. Got our lid here. Put our lid on. Make sure that's got a tight seal. Airlock. Put our airlock in here. Okay. Add a little bit of water. Here's our water. Very gently add a little bit of water in our airlock. Line. And this should start fermenting in the next couple of minutes, couple of hours, maybe 10 hours. So if it's 2:30 today, tonight it'll start fermenting and you'll see carbon dioxide coming through the airlock. That was it for this video on how to brew a beer brew ingredient kit. Future videos, we'll look at making a video on how to create a wort chiller and possibly how to wash yeast for reuse. Thank you.